Hey guys, All Sports 83 sporting another video at you, and today is a first on the channel where I'm going to be doing my first commentary video as we're going to take a look at the new spring football league, the XFL. Now this is the second rendition of the XFL. If you were around in 2001, you know they took a stab at it then, didn't quite work out, but this is a very different version of the XFL. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and I'm going to give you my first impressions, the good, the bad, and well, the other thing. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. Join in the conversation in the comments below, and I look forward to hear what you have to say. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to talk about a couple of different things in terms of my first impressions. I'm going to break it up into a few different categories just so we can get things started here. And the first category most would think is the most important, and that would be gameplay. What is the product that's actually on the field? Now, I can tell you that most of the players in the XFL, through some of the research that I've done, many of them played in the AAF, the American Alliance of Football, that took place last spring that didn't quite make it through its first season. It kind of fell under and kind of crumbled a little more than halfway through. And so it'd be my guess that the actual gameplay was probably a little bit similar to that, but to me the biggest difference here is probably the marketing. I didn't even know much about the AAF and didn't really watch any more than maybe a few minutes. Maybe saw part of a game on a screen while I was eating dinner out, or never saw anything pop up. Maybe I think I caught a few minutes of a game that was on the NFL Network at one evening, but it just really wasn't advertised very well. The XFL is a completely different story. It's been 2 years in the making. It seems that they've taken their time, and they've brought in some really well-known people like Oliver Luck to come in and kind of run the show. Vince McMahon, the owner, has kind of taken more of a supportive and kind of financial backing role, and that's kind of been his place in the new rendition of the XFL. And so really I would imagine that the gameplay is not that much different, given that you've basically transplanted the majority of the players from the AAF into the XFL. Now with that said, I didn't have many issues with the actual gameplay. It wasn't the NFL in my opinion, but at the same time you got to consider the fact that this is week one of a brand new league, and these rosters are made up of guys who spent some time in the NFL and spent some time on practice squads, and they're just really trying to make a name for themselves and really try to show that they still have a career in football. And I thought that for the most part, I thought the play was pretty good. There were some sloppy moments here and there, really in all four of the games. But at the end of the day, it looked like football. I mean, it was football for sure, and I enjoyed every single game. Certainly, you could see some mistakes. Definitely from some of the quarterback play, you could see mistakes here and there. There's a couple of really good quarterbacks. At least they had a good showing on the first week, and I just thought that it looked like football. It looked like professional football. Now, I will say, for those of you out there who are bigger college fans, it did look a little bit closer to the college game, just in my opinion. There's a big difference between throwing a receiver open and throwing to an open receiver. That's the difference between the NFL and college. You got to throw receivers open in the NFL, but if you really kind of picked through these games with a fine-tooth comb, a lot of the big completions in these games were where wide receivers were kind of wide open, or receivers, tight ends, whoever. They were typically wide open when you get a big play. So I think you could see probably a bigger discrepancy between the defenses and the players getting open. But at the end of the day, it looked good. I think if you're a college football fan, you're going to see some resemblance to the college game, a little more than you might find, say, in NFL games. But I still think at the end of the day, it just looked like football. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought the gameplay and the product on the field looked pretty good. And so I imagine that maybe the AAF probably kind of had the same result, but it just wasn't marketed well. This is a completely different story. I thought they hit a home run with the marketing and kind of getting their name out there so people knew what it was coming. And then obviously you look at the broadcast partners. You can find these games on television. Every single game was televised on a national network. So So the access was obviously a lot easier, which I think is a big plus for anyone looking to get into the XFL. So I think all in all, the gameplay was pretty good. It was accessible, and I thought, again, it just looked like football for sure. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up about gameplay is really going to help me transition into the second category that I want to talk about, which is the coverage of the games from the networks. One of the biggest things about the XFL is some of the rule changes. In this image here, you can see from ABC that the lineup on the kickoffs is the first thing you'll notice is very different about the league, where you see the receiving team on their own 30, but the kicking team is actually on the receiving team's 35. Now, those players cannot move until the receiver catches the ball, the return man catches the ball from the kick. I thought that rules like this really kind of separate the XFL in the way the AAF played, and in some ways even separates them from the NFL, which I think is really unique and really, really cool. Again, I think the coverage of these rule changes were really well done. I thought all of the networks did a really good job of helping the consumer at home understand how the XFL is different from other types of football like college or the NFL or even the AAF. So I thought that was really, really successful. I thought the coverage overall was very good. There was some really, really neat things that I want to bring up in the next couple of minutes, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to kind of point out that maybe I didn't like so well. Let's start with a positive, and I think that one of the biggest positives from the coverage was the access that the networks were able to bring into the homes to the viewers. Like a shot here of being in the locker room as head coach of the Roughnecks, June Jones, is talking to the team. There were similar moments like this throughout all four of the games. Some areas where the team was talking, maybe one of the leaders on the defense was kind of getting the team kind of riled up maybe before they head out on the field or whatnot. I thought that access was pretty good. I will say some of that access did take place during some of the AAF games, so there wasn't really much different, but I do think it's still a unique aspect of the game, and it's a cool thing for you to sit at home and see some of these interesting access. Another really interesting thing that I thought might need a little bit of work, but I do like the idea, and that's the field reporters having these moments throughout the game where they get a chance to talk to a player after a big play. They get right on the sideline, they'll interview the coaches. So there's a little bit more access, at least from the approach of what's going to happen with those field reporters on the sidelines with the players. And so you're going to get some interesting moments. You're going to get kind of some raw emotion at times. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. We've got an example of that later on. Another really great thing was the access that you have with the referees. You actually get to hear the conversation as the referees huddle up as they're talking about a penalty or some kind of judgment call that they're having to make on the field. Also, you see on the bottom left part of the screen, there's actually access to the replay guy who's in charge of reviewing all plays where there's a close call, and then you get to hear the conversations that review person has with the referees, so you know as soon as they know what that decision is going to be. And I really liked that aspect of the coverage. Now, as I said, there's a little bit of a risk reward that comes with all of this access on the sideline with these field reporters. Sometimes you can stick a microphone in a player's face a little too quickly. That did happen in the first game on Saturday. He did say a word that wasn't good for family-friendly national television. I do think that was probably a product of a person maybe not getting to that mute button as quickly as they should have. These games do take place on a little bit of a delay so that you can catch those kinds of moments. They just seem to miss it in that moment. I think that the XFL and the broadcast, the networks, will try to tighten that up and try to avoid those things from happening in the future. It was the first week. They're trying to iron out all of those kinks, and but hopefully we won't see too many of those things moving forward. Now, one other thing that happened on Saturday involving field reporter for ESPN, Diana Ricidi. She has been charged with, like many of the other field reporters for the XFL, of really just making sure to get into all of the action, which I think she really did a really good job of. And one of those moments where she, to me, from my perspective, she was just doing her job. There was a touchdown for the defenders, and the team decided they wanted to celebrate and kind of do one of those photo images where everybody kind of gets together. And unfortunately, she tried to get into that action, and it actually ended up looking a little more awkward than anything else. And so sometimes that access can be a little too much. And so again, I'm not blaming the field reporter here. I think she was doing her job. It's a very difficult job to basically be told you got to make sure that you're always in the middle of the action, and that's what she was doing. From my perspective, I think she was doing what she was told. But hopefully, the league and the networks will look at this example where, if you really look at it, it looks more awkward than anything else. Hopefully they will look at this and say, okay, maybe we should use some more discernment. Let's have some more communication about this access, and make sure that when we cut down to these field reporters, and that when we have these moments, that they enhance the experience and not hinder it. I think that was kind of a moment where it seemed a little more awkward than anything. So hopefully that will get corrected, and maybe those will be a little more polished as we move on in the XFL season. Now, the last real criticism that I have for the first week of the XFL, and I think this is going to be a problem that's going to last at least for the first season, is some of the stadiums that they play in are just too big. You look at MetLife Stadium here, where the Guardians play their home games. It just looks too big. If you look even on this shot here, you can see there's so many empty seats all around the stadium. This other shot where it's you're kind of close on the field, even in the background, you can tell that the upper deck has been completely shut off, and even by shutting off the upper deck, you still see a lot of empty seats on that lower deck. It's not that there's not a lot of people there. I think there was 17,000 fans that went to that game, which is a lot of people, but you get a huge venue like this, and it just doesn't look like it's that many people. And I think what that looks like to the eye is it just doesn't look like anybody cares. And I think that visuals do matter. And I think that moving forward, maybe next year, I'm sure they've already signed contracts with these stadiums. I think that they need to reconsider having home fields or these home stadiums be at these really large venues. I know that the Guardians play at MetLife Stadium, where the Giants and Jets play their home games. The St. Louis Battlehawks are going to play in the dome that the Rams used to play in St. Louis. That's another large facility. And then the same thing with the Seattle Dragons. They're going to play at Century Field, where the Seattle Seahawks play their home games. These are all humongous facilities, and they're just too big for a startup spring pro league. You contrast that with the way it looked at Audi Field in Washington, D.C. for the Defenders Dragons game on Saturday. That was a much more intimate setting. It was about a 20,000 capacity for that stadium. There's about 17,000 people there, and so it looked like it was almost a packed house, because it was. And I thought the crowd was great. The atmosphere was great. You could feel it even through the television, because in the background you could see just a huge crowd in those seats, and I think that it made for much a better viewing experience. And I think that matters. Visuals do matter, and so I think you got to make sure that you take every opportunity as a startup league to have a good look. And so these huge stadiums really just don't look that good on television. So my humble opinion, if anybody ever sees this that's attached to the XFL, is maybe reconsider some of these larger venues for home stadiums. But overall, I really think the XFL did a great job. The networks did a great job. I was never bored. I watched every play from all 4 games and really enjoyed it. And if it keeps going this way, I'll probably do some more XFL videos, maybe throw some power rankings out there for the teams, and really enjoyed it. I also want to throw a shout out to another YouTube channel called XFL Chalk Talk. It's where I get the bulk of my XFL information. I think those guys do a really good job of pushing out some content and have really good takes on what's going on in the XFL. So they don't know me, but I wanted to throw some credit out to them. I'll put a link to their YouTube channel below. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will talk some more XFL football soon. Have a good one.